All right, let's do it. I'm ready. Are you guys ready? Welcome in, Broncos country, to this Denver Broncos Syndicate live stream. Here we are at our final day of open practices for training camp. So I wanted to come on in and sort of do a summary stream here of some of the main observations and takeaways from training camp. But before we get into that, guys, I just wanted to give the stream a couple minutes just to breathe here. Make sure that everything is stable across the YouTube platform. Give us a couple of minutes for some people to jump into the chat here. We've got Antelope in the house. What is going on? Good meeting you out at training camp the other day, Antelope. It was a great pleasure. I always love meeting my subscribers out there at Denver Broncos Syndicate, out there at training camp. It's been such an incredible experience out there. I've met several members of this awesome community, and that just goes to show why Broncos country is the best fan base in the NFL. All right, guys, so I'm just going to make sure that we've got a green check mark here on the YouTube page. Looks like we are all good from this end. All right, guys. So, as you can see by the title of this stream, we are going to dive into the offensive line performance for the Denver Broncos as sort of the meat and potatoes of this stream. And we're going to discuss what our level of concern should really be for the offensive line as we head into our second preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to talk about if the offensive line has been able to redeem themselves, has been able to bounce back over the course of the last couple of days in training camp. And we're also going to discuss just overall the outlook for the starters in that game. And we just want to overall wrap up how the starters have performed from the beginning of training camp to the end of training camp. So see if things have been able to come full circle for the Denver Broncos. We've got 5 people in the house. Thank you so much, guys. But before we jump in officially, if you guys could just do me a big favor and leave a like on this stream, I would really appreciate it. As well as subscribe to the channel if you have yet to do so. Those are 2 free and easy ways that you can help show your support, helps tell the old YouTube algorithm to push us out, and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. All right, I'm going to get my other screen over here and make it a lot easier to see here. So, as we alluded to already, guys, today was the final day of open practices for Denver Broncos training camp. But Sean Payton reminded the media that training camp is not over and the players cannot look at it like training camp is over. They still have a whole other week of camp practices next week with joint practices against the Los Angeles Rams, which are going to probably be our most physical, most intense practices of all of training camp. It's going to be a good measuring stick for where this team is really at. It's going to be starters going against starters. We're going to be able to see what the offensive line looks like going against one of the best pass rushers in the NFL in Aaron Donald. I'm a little daunted by what's going to transpire there. Obviously, our starters and the Rams starters are probably not going to play in our preseason finale at Mile High after these joint practices. So a lot of teams like to treat these joint practices kind of like a preseason game, if you will. So that's going to be the mindset for sure for both of these teams going into this. The Rams don't ever play their starters in the preseason. Sean Payton says that the Broncos starters in the game against the 49ers this week are going to get about 20 to 24 plays, but we're going to see the debut and return of Javonte Williams for the first time since week 5 of last year, or week 4 of last year, when he suffered his torn ACL, LCL, and posterior lateral corner. The remarkable recovery that Javonte Williams has made out at training camp cannot be overstated, guys. This dude looks like he is all the way back. He's cutting well. He still has elite vision, elite burst, and you can tell that he's really ready to turn loose out there and get that first hit in from somebody who's not in his own helmet and somebody who can't really hit him exactly hard, you know. I mean, Javonte Williams has said that he's definitely looking forward to that first little bit of contact. We got Michael Ronquillo in the house saying, "Go Broncos." Great supporter and friend of the show out in Tucson, Arizona. Thank you so much for tuning in, Michael. So, again, Peyton reminded us that training camp is far from over, even though it is over for the general public. He said to his players that the light of the end of the tunnel is definitely not there, and the tunnel is still dark. So Peyton wants to make sure that players don't let off the gas, even though we don't have fans out there to pump up the energy and kind of pump up the atmosphere out there at Centura Health Training Center anymore. He wants to make sure that his final practices, especially those joint practices against the Rams, are going to be tough, hard, and physical. So going back into the preseason game this Saturday, 6 o'clock in Santa Clara, California against the 49ers, the starting players for the Denver Broncos figure to see about 20 to 24 snaps on both sides of the ball again, besides Pookie, who's going to see about 10 to 12 snaps. Marvin Mims is going to play in that game, so that's going to be a big storyline. He's going to see reps, obviously, both at receiver and at return man. So keep an eye on Marvin Mims in this game, Broncos country, because obviously he didn't play in that Arizona game, and this is going to be his first chance to get his feet wet, get comfortable, and really get some of that chemistry in real game situations with Russell Wilson. And then this is also going to be his first chance to get a good look as a returner in game situations. So I'm really excited to see if Marvin Mims can officially nap onto that return man job from Montrell Washington, who looked really good in his own right, both in training camp as well as our first preseason game against the Arizona Cardinals. Antelope says, I hope Jaleel McLaughlin gets more playing time Saturday. So we're definitely going to discuss Jaleel McLaughlin in this stream. I made a separate video talking about him today. He's getting first team reps in this offense. Part of it's due to injury. Tyler Beatty suffered like a hand or a wrist injury or something like that, and he's been held out of practice for the last couple of days. Javonte Williams was held out today for just a rest day in preparation for him to go out there against the San Francisco 49ers. But this has been a real opportunity these past couple of days for Jaleel McLaughlin to shine. He is easily the Broncos' speediest, most explosive running back. He just needs the tiniest little crease, and he can zip through it. He can zigzag his way through guys and burst his way for a massive gain. I'm so excited to potentially see Jaleel McLaughlin in more in-game situations against the San Francisco 49ers. And I strongly believe that Jaleel McLaughlin has already made the team as the RB3. Sean Payton has sung him high praise at every given opportunity. Sean Payton has said that he is the change of pace back for this team, so that pretty much solidifies his role right there. We've got DS in the house saying, I'm so excited to see Marvin Mims this week. So am I. I'm so excited to see, again, him build that chemistry and that connection with Russell Wilson. That's something that out at camp, I feel like Russell Wilson has definitely built a better chemistry with guys such as Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, who he's played with for a year, but as well as Marquez Callaway, even little Jordan Humphrey, and Brandon Johnson, who was unfortunately injured last week in camp. He should be back soon, hopefully. We've got Ray in the chat saying, good evening, Gage in Broncos country. Good evening, Ray. How are you doing this evening, my friend? But again, this will be the first chance for Marvin Mims to shine, and we've seen some issues with him and Russell Wilson in terms of chemistry. Russell had a couple of overthrows day before yesterday in practice to Marvin Mims, and it appeared that the two just weren't on the same page on those reps. They got a little bit more comfortable over the next couple of days, especially as Marvin Mims started to see more and more reps with this first team offense, and Russell Wilson definitely was a lot more confident with where Marvin Mims was going to be in the zone coverage and where he was going to stop on his routes and so on and so forth. It just looked like the timing and the chemistry between Russell Wilson and Marvin Mims is really starting to come together. And that's what we're hoping to continue to see in this 49ers game. DS says, Gage is the best Broncos reporter on YouTube. Thank you so much. D. Brown, good evening, folks. Question, any other receivers emerging at all? Absolutely. So we've already talked about Marquez Callaway and little Jordan Humphrey, who are both slated to have pretty big roles in the offense this year, I feel like, especially Marquez Callaway. He's somebody who has that familiarity with this offense from his time with New Orleans. Same for Humphrey. And then also I would keep an eye definitely on Taylor Grimes, undrafted free agent. He's somebody who has been Mr. Reliable out there. He really has. I know that's Tim Patrick's nickname, but Taylor Grimes is Mr. Reliable 2.0 basically. He catches everything that's thrown his way. He's a perfect little gadget guy out of the slot. He is really good with short to intermediate route running, especially. So Taylor Grimes has stood out. He's somebody that I feel like the team's kind of trying to hide a little bit, and we can maybe try to sneak him through on the practice squad. Brandon Johnson is somebody that emerged as the main slot receiver for the Denver Broncos, the main replacement for Tim Patrick after Patrick tore his Achilles. Unfortunately, Brandon Johnson tweaked his ankle last week in practice, so he's going to be held out a little bit longer. I'm hoping that maybe we can see him in those joint practices against the Los Angeles Rams and get him a little bit more acquainted and comfortable in this offense. But Brandon Johnson has looked really good. So there have been plenty of players at the receiver position that have emerged and have really stood out for this team. So the next topic I want to jump into, guys, is Sean Payton spoke about Russell Wilson and his familiarity and comfortability level in this offense, especially over the last couple of weeks, because with Russell Wilson, training camp for him kind of started out a little bit rough, a little bit inconsistent. Justin Simmons was really making his life hell out there. And that just goes to show how good of a player Justin Simmons is, especially. But with Russell Wilson, especially over the last week, he's gotten a lot more confident in this offense. He's decisive with making his throws. He's threading tight window throws. I mean, he is looking like the old Russell Wilson in practice situations. And even in the game against the Arizona Cardinals, when the offensive line gave him somewhat adequate protection, he was able to make those really good throws on schedule. He made some off-schedule plays as well with that drop throw to Jerry Jeudy that should have been a touchdown. There were some plays where it appeared that Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy weren't on the same page. I think about the throw where the Cardinals ran cover 0 and Russell just had to heave it up into the end zone to Courtland Sutton. I feel like Jerry Jeudy was going to run a hot route on that play, or was expected to run a hot route on that play, and he didn't do so. So there's some chemistry issues that we're trying to get worked through here. But I really feel like overall things are really coming together just with the comfortability level and the familiarity level for Russell Wilson in this offense. And Sean Payton went on to discuss that. He said that Russell Wilson over the past couple of weeks has been really, quote, impressive. He went on to talk about his movement skills within the pocket and outside the pocket, and his accuracy, which Sean Payton has commended at being an elite level. So that's really high praise for Sean Payton, and you can tell that he's really trying to work up Russell Wilson's confidence as we go into the season, because Sean believes in Russell Wilson. Every time Sean Payton talks about Russell Wilson, it's clear that he heavily believes in him. So DS says, I'm wondering if Stidham would work better as sort of a rushing quarterback. That does seem to be a little bit more akin to his game. I feel like a lot of his rushes are when the play breaks down after he's indecisive with making his reads. He's scared to make mistakes out there, it seems like. Especially in practice, he's afraid to force the throw into a tight window in a practice situation where, quite frankly, it's okay to throw an interception. Ray says, you were right originally. Mace confirmed both suffered a broken ankle last season. Got it. Awesome. Well, not awesome, but with Bowles, I mean, I want to talk about him. He's obviously on the thumbnail of this live stream, and he is a massive concern for the Denver Broncos right now. He had an extremely rough game in our first preseason matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. He got beat out there by guys such as Dennis Gardeck, who are relatively no-name players. And out at training camp this past week, unfortunately, it hasn't gotten much better for him. Well, I've heard some opinions on Garrett Bowles, especially that his quickness and his agility with his feet, which were a really big component of his game, ever since that ankle injury, it seems that that quickness and that agility are no longer there. So instead of being able to finesse his way into blocking out players that are rushing off the edge, he has no choice but to hold them because he's going to get physically outmatched, especially on speed rushes. That's something that's very concerning. Michael says, one concern do you think Broncos have to work on in preseason game 2? Definitely just the continuity with the offensive line. Garrett Bowles, I'm just worried things are not going to get better with Garrett Bowles, and that's a big concern for me. right now, if he's not healthy, the Broncos need to think about sitting him and inserting Cam Fleming at left tackle. Fleming has had a decent camp. He had a really rough game against the Arizona Cardinals, but he wasn't the liability out there that Garrett Bowles was. And unfortunately, right now, the tackle market in terms of free agents is pretty slim pickings, and there aren't many good tackles that are available for trade either. And by not many, I mean pretty much none. For free agents, there are guys like Eric Fisher out there. He's pretty much the only true left tackle that's available. Taylor Lewan is pretty much retired at this point. You can look at any recent picture of him and see that he looks like a tight end and is not looking like somebody who's about to play left tackle in the NFL anytime soon. So right now, the best option on the free agent market for left tackle would probably be Eric Fisher. DS says, if the Broncos offensive line can look at least decent against San Francisco, I'll be very happy because it shows the offensive line is creating chemistry. That's for sure. And obviously, this is going to be a big test for us this week against the San Francisco 49ers. They're a very formidable opponent. They have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. Their best piece, Nick Bosa, is currently in the midst of a contract dispute, so he's probably not going to appear in this game. But we still have guys to Eric Armstead to deal with, and they have some strong depth on that defensive line as well. It's a very well-coached unit. It always has been in the Kyle Shanahan era. So this is going to be a big litmus test for this Denver Broncos offensive line and a big step up in competition, quite frankly, from the worst team in the NFL and the Arizona Cardinals. So I'm concerned about Garrett Bowles. I just can't shake off that concern. And I want to come over here, Broncos country, and I want to take a look at Garrett Bowles' contract situation because I feel like there's a chance that if we go into the regular season and Garrett Bowles continues to struggle at the level that he's struggling now, and it becomes clear that his health is not going to hold up and that he's not going to be able to be the left tackle for the future for the Denver Broncos, I feel like the Broncos could essentially do him a favor and release him and give him an opportunity to go sign somewhere else and try to get that confidence and that moxie back in his game, quite frankly, and that physicality and that nastiness. Because right now, I look at Garrett Bowles and it seems like he's a player who's lost his confidence out there, and I'm wondering just how much of that is going to get better over time. I'm concerned about it. So I want to come over here, guys, and we're going to take a look at Garrett Bowles' contract situation, courtesy of Spot Track. So if we take a look here, let's say that Garrett Bowles struggles into the regular season, becomes basically a Melvin Gordon level of liability, and loses his job to Cam Fleming. Let's say he goes to the Broncos and asks for his release. I don't see that being a crazy scenario here. In that scenario, the Broncos could save $13.8 million against the cap in 2023, which would free up some decent money for them. They would have to take a $4 million dead cap penalty in 2023 and a $4 million dead cap penalty in 2024. So then we have the other scenario where he remains on the roster through this season, but the team is still in a position where they want to move on. They could essentially move on from him with just a $4 million cap hit in 2024, and they'd save $16 million in cap savings in 2024. So that might be the more realistic option if the Denver Broncos do want to go down that route. That is a very extreme case scenario, but right now, I'm not somebody who's one to overreact, but we're kind of approaching that extreme scenario territory. And I love Garrett Bowles as a human being. I respect him so much as somebody who's battled through learning disabilities, a really tough upbringing, and he came through all of that and has turned that into a pretty successful NFL career. But he's age 31, coming off of a very severe ankle injury, and this injury may have robbed him of his best asset as a football player, as a left tackle in the NFL, and that's concerning to me. DS says, thoughts on the alternate helmet showcase being against the Jets and Patriots. I like it. I mean, I definitely was thinking it was going to be against the Patriots because it's Christmas Eve night. I mean, you definitely want the whiteout helmets, the snow game for that one, basically. I'm hoping it actually snows that night. That'd be awesome. I've never been to a snow game at Mile High. I'm ready for it, man. In all my years of going to Broncos home games, I have not gotten to have a snow game yet, so I'm ready for that. Against the Jets, that's going to add a little bit more fun and storyline to that game. Obviously, the big storyline there is the Aaron Rodgers, Nathaniel Hackett, Sean Payton drama. But I like the white helmets. They're starting to grow on me quite a bit, actually, and I'm excited to wear them, especially in prime time on Christmas Eve against the Patriots. That's going to be really fun. But jumping back in here, we're looking for, aside Garrett Bowles, I'm expecting a better performance from the offensive line as a whole. Cam Fleming will probably see some reps at right tackle. It's transpired that way throughout the course of the week. Isaiah Prince is somebody who really struggled in the Arizona game, and it looks like he's kind of been demoted a little bit down the depth chart. Quinn Miners and Ben Powers, our two guards, kind of had rough outings in that game as well. I'm expecting both of them to bounce back. Lloyd Cushenberry, who has been my biggest punching bag, honestly, if you've ever watched any of my Lloyd Cushenberry content here on Denver Broncos Syndicate, I've been pretty harsh on him, but I have to eat my words with Lloyd. He's been our most consistent offensive lineman throughout training camp and our, quite frankly, least liability out there, and I can't believe I'm saying that. So I'm hoping that Lloyd Cushenberry can continue his strong performance out there. I'm expecting our two guards in Powers and Miners to bounce back. Mike McGlinchey will not be able to play against his former team, unfortunately. He's still dealing with his knee injury and is probably going to miss the rest of training camp, including our joint practices with the Rams. That's going to be pretty unfortunate for him. But I'm hoping that Cam Fleming will be able to anchor things down there. And if Cam Fleming outplays Garrett Bowles at the left tackle position, then keep an eye on that, Broncos country. I really would, because I just don't think Garrett Bowles is healthy right now. Michael says, thanks for what you do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Michael. I agree, Ray. Snow games are just the absolute best. They are so much fun, man. So moving into our next topic, which is Russell Wilson. Just how was his trajectory throughout the course of training camp? Because overall, Russell Wilson definitely didn't have the greatest start to camp. He was throwing interceptions out there. He didn't look confident and comfortable out there. But again, over the course of the next few days, as we got more and more into the meat and potatoes of camp, he was more decisive with his throws, accurate downfield. He had a beautiful throw today in camp where he ripped it to the back corner of the end zone against tight coverage from Kareem Jackson to Greg Dulcich. A beautiful tight window throw. Russ has shown flashes of the old Russ out there, and he definitely looks like a quarterback that you can win with. Now, I don't necessarily know if Russell Wilson is ever going to be a quarterback that you can win because of at this point in his... Oh, Jesus Christ. Sorry, guys. It wouldn't be a Denver Broncos Syndicate live stream without technical difficulties. That's why. It's because I have my cord on my other chair back here that I'm using as a footstool. Sorry about that. But I don't necessarily know if Russell Wilson is ever going to be a quarterback in the NFL that you can win because of, but he's certainly a quarterback that you can win with. He's not going to be a liability. He's going to execute at a level that you need him to execute. He can make high-level throws when you need him to, but he's not somebody that's going to be able to put this offense on his back anymore, and it's not going to be able to be the Denver Fighting Russes. It can't be that for this team this year. The rest of the team is going to have to pull their weight around Russell Wilson, namely the offensive line, for this team to be successful. And I do feel like if they don't do that, this team is going to be much more successful than they were last year under Nathaniel Hackett. Last year truly felt like rock bottom for the Denver Broncos. There's only up to go from where we were last year. But I will also say that with Sean Payton, I kind of view him in the same category as I view coaches like Mike Tomlin and Mike Vrabel. They're guys who are almost allergic to double-digit losses. Sean Payton's worst record as a head coach is a few 7-9 seasons. He's never had a double-digit losing season as a head coach. And I feel like that's going to translate here in Denver. Guys like Mike Tomlin, Sean Payton, Mike Vrabel, they will take teams that are talent deficient and they will have them competing at a high level in football games. With Sean Payton, his body of work is out there even when he hasn't had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees. In 2019, Teddy Bridgewater looked like a quarterback that you can win because of. He was playing at an elite level in those 5 games that he had to fill in for Drew Brees. Teddy was the reason why the Saints went 5-0 in those games without Drew Brees. Then, in 2020, when that team was just ravaged by COVID and Drew Brees got injured again, Taysom Hill got into the game and looked like a competent starting quarterback out there. Then 2021 had to go through a revolving door of quarterbacks again. Jameis Winston, who was playing at a really high level before tearing his ACL. The Saints were looking like a team that was on track to win 11 games with Jameis Winston, Mr. 30 for 30 himself, as their starting quarterback. They were on track to win potentially 11 games in that season before Jameis went down. And even after Jameis went down, he had that team competitive with Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, and even Ian Book starting games for them. So that's a testament to Sean Payton's abilities as a coach. Even when he's had teams that have been deficient on talent, not necessarily due to roster construction like the Denver Broncos, mostly due to injuries in New Orleans, he's still found ways to be competitive in games. And so I feel like people saying that the Denver Broncos floor is 3 wins or whatever the hell it is, that's a bunch of bullcrap, quite frankly. This team, because of somebody like Sean Payton who refuses to lose like that, he's not going to tank, he's not going to crash for Caleb, anything like that. That's just not in Sean Payton's DNA. So I expect that this team, worst case scenario, is going to go maybe 8-9, 7-10, but we're not going to have a 3-4 win season like we did last year. DS says, our coaching staff is too good to finish under 5. I agree, it really is. And quite frankly, I still feel like the talent on this roster is too good. And even if Russell Wilson plays at just an okay level, that's still a decent enough level for this team to win football games. Russ just has to go in there and basically not get up. That's all he has to do. And if he does that, then I feel like this team's going to be in a good position. So, jumping into the defensive side of the ball now, guys, my MVP for the entire training camp is Zach Allen. This dude has lived up to every single penny of his massive contract that we signed him to from the Arizona Cardinals. He didn't have the greatest game out there per se, although he did have a couple of really nice plays, but in training camp, this cat is wrecking shop every single day. TFLs in the backfield in the run game, sacks. This cat is chasing after Russell Wilson all the time, kind of making him have to run for his life a little bit. And he's had to basically been told to ease up a little bit these past few days so he doesn't wreck a practice. That's what Zach Allen has been doing. He's been wrecking practice. So the Denver Broncos have kind of had to tell him and some of our other pass rushers, including Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, Randy Gregory, Frank Clark, they've kind of had to dial them back a little bit just because they've been going so hard in training camp, and we haven't been able to really get a fair evaluation for timing on routes on offense and various things like that. Welcome back, Antelope. Good to see you back in. So overall, that's kind of also where this team sits right now with Zach Allen. He's just really taken his game to a whole other level. Me too, Michael. Me too. DS says, if Zach Allen is getting held every snap in the preseason, he's going to wreak havoc in the regular season. 100%. 100%. And he's beating guys to the inside. He's beating guys to the outside. He beats guys with bull rushes. He's got a real variety of moves in his tool belt. And now he's really taken learning under J.J. Watt for the past few years very seriously. And he emulates a lot of J.J. in his game. Like, when you look at my notes out here, you'd think that I'm scouting J.J. Watt sometimes. That's how many times the number 99 pops up in my notes. Yeah, man, Zach Allen was a massive get for the Denver Broncos in free agency and just a massive win overall. So he's definitely my MVP of camp. Elijah Garcia, man, he's somebody that I feel like is going to make this team. He's somebody who was an undrafted free agent this past season, a big body defensive end, 2 sacks in that Arizona game. He had a sack yesterday as well. He makes plays in the run game. Vance Joseph spoke of him yesterday in his post-practice presser, and he said that Elijah Garcia is really coming alive. And considering that the Denver Broncos are a little bit depth-starved right now on the defensive line, I feel like bringing in somebody like Elijah, I feel like having Elijah Garcia on the active roster is going to bode well. He's another undrafted free agent to keep an eye on to make this team, aside from Jaleel McLaughlin, who is basically a lock to make the team. I made a video talking about him already today. Just the burst and explosiveness he provides, the tiniest little crease that he needs to get through holes to run through, and he can burst one free for a massive gain. He can catch passes out of the backfield, swing routes, Texas routes, those kind of things. That's how they've been really utilizing him. Even on the first team offense the past few days. Go ahead and check out my video about that. Diaz says Garcia did a great job of finding the holes on the Cardinals' offensive line. He plays patient. Exactly. And for a young player, that's a really critical aspect of his game because you can tell that mentally it's clicking for him and the game isn't moving too fast for him. So that's a really a big thing to be excited about with Elijah Garcia and Jordan Jackson as well. Jordan Jackson had a strong camp and had a really strong preseason game against the Cardinals. He might be somebody that the team might want to try to sneak through on the practice squad, but Elijah Garcia's tape is out there at this point. I don't know if the team's going to be able to sneak him through waivers and get him onto the practice squad. He might get poached. Speaking of somebody who might get poached, man, again, Jaleel McLaughlin's made this team. So, the last topic I wanted to get into, guys, going into this game against the San Francisco 49ers, especially with the struggles from Jarrett Stidham as the backup quarterback to Russell Wilson. Oh, thank you so much for the subscription, Juniper Junkie. Really appreciate you. I didn't even realize I had enabled those notifications. That scared the crap out of me. Thank you so much for the subscribe. I really appreciate it. But oh geez, where was I, man? That completely caught me off guard. But thank you so much. Oh yeah, Trey Lance. So with the struggles from Jarrett Stidham as the Broncos' backup quarterback and potential insurance policy for Russell Wilson this year, some in Broncos country have thrown around the possibility of trading for Trey Lance, who is falling pretty far down the depth chart in San Francisco 49ers training camp. It almost seems like at this point, Sam Darnold is a lock to win the backup quarterback job to Brock Purdy, and Trey Lance is almost the odd man out. I don't think that this would be a good move for the Denver Broncos, and here's why. If somebody like Kyle Shanahan can't get the mental side of the game for Trey Lance to click, I don't know if somebody like Sean Payton, who runs a very complicated offense with very particular nuances and a lot of wordy language and that kind of stuff, if Trey Lance is really struggling with the mental side of his game like it seems like it is, then I don't feel like a Sean Payton offense would be the best fit for him, especially if he's not fitting well into a Kyle Shanahan offense. DS says, I want to see Riley Moss out there making plays. Absolutely, man. I definitely want to see Riley back out there as well. He obviously got hurt very early on in camp and is probably not going to be out there for the rest of the preseason. I'm hoping that once we get into the regular season, he can get back into the swing of things and get his feet wet in some of the early games. It may not be until like the end of the regular season that we really see Riley Moss break out and take off, especially with the emergence of Jaquan McMillan as our main backup boundary corner. But keep an eye on Riley Moss towards the end of the season when he gets a lot more comfortable, gets more reps in there. That's when he could really start making an impact for this team. But jumping into Trey Lance, it seems that the 49ers at this point in time are not too keen on trading him. Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show today, and he pretty much said that the 49ers are content with keeping Trey Lance even as a third string quarterback. They still believe in his upside, but right now, again, it feels like it's just the mental side of his game. It's not the physical talent. He's not seeing the field out there when you look at his tape. He's struggling to process things. He's missing wide open receivers in the progression. There's no excuse for it. There's really no excuse for it. And he scrambles way too early, gets himself into bad sacks. I really liked Trey Lance coming out of North Dakota State, but right now, man, it just doesn't feel like he's only 23, so I really shouldn't say that. He's a few months younger than I am. So he's still young. He's got plenty of time to figure this stuff out. But if somebody like Kyle Shanahan can't get that side of the game for him to click, then I don't know if Sean Payton can. Niners said they might play the starting offense a few snaps. Ooh, I wonder if that means Brock Purdy as well. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But I do expect to see a heavy dose of Sam Darnold in that game, and we're going to see Trey Lance as well. If he struggles out there, then that just furthers my belief that the Broncos should stay pat. So overall, guys, in training camp this year, I feel like we saw a pretty steady progression from this team. It started off a little bit hazy, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defense was pretty consistent right out the gate, but as time went on, the offense finally started to catch up with the defense on this graph. Some of that correlated to Justin Simmons no longer being in the defensive lineup with his injury, but a lot of it also is just Russell Wilson getting more confident and comfortable with the timing from his receivers on routes. He's threading the needle on tight window throws, and when it comes to tight window throws, I don't give a crap who's covering. A good tight window throw is a good tight window throw. So Russell Wilson has made those, and that's what I've been impressed to see. Offensive line, I'm hoping will continue to show some growth and more consistency. Garrett Bowles, I don't know. He's just been an absolute mess. Yes, Brock Purdy too. Okay, cool. So that'll be Brock Purdy's first game action since the NFC Championship game. We'll get some starters on the defensive line against our offensive line. That's going to be a good litmus test for us because the 49ers are expected to be one of the top teams in the NFL. So it's going to be a great measuring stick for us, Broncos country. I'm excited for this game for sure. All right, Broncos country, before we dip out of here, if you guys have any more questions, comments, concerns, again, with training camp, Javonte Williams looks all the way back. That's a big theme from this camp, I feel like. If the offensive line can string together some more positive performances in the preseason, then I'll feel confident about them a little bit more moving forward, but I still have a lot of concerns, especially at tackle with Bowles and Mike McGlinchey. Defense continues to look stellar out there. Zach Allen, our secondary. K1 Williams is dealing with an injury right now, but he had a really good camp up until this point at nickel. Our two corners, Pat Surtain, Jaquan McMillan behind Damari Mathis. I feel like Jaquan's actually kind of pushing Damari a little bit. That's how good he's been, and Damari's kind of been a little bit up and down in camp. Linebacker, Drew Sanders is a stud out there. Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton continuing to make plays. This defense looks like it's going to be continuing to be a top tier unit this year. Yeah, it will be interesting to watch Antelope for sure. Trey Lance held on to the ball way too long against the Raiders and made a lot of bad decisions. He did, and that showed up on his tape quite a bit. Antelope says, how's Ben Powers been doing this week in camp? A lot better. I feel like that rough game against the Cardinals was almost an anomaly because he had a pretty strong camp before that, and he's had a strong camp after that. So I'm hoping that he'll have a strong game against the 49ers, and if he does, then I can basically shake off most of my concerns with Ben Powers. Same for Quinn Miners. I'm hoping that it was just a bad day in the offense. In the office for him, and there were just issues with communication and all that kind of stuff. So again, man, the longer five guys have to play together on an offensive line, the better. Just in terms of knowing what the guy next to you is going to do, just that communication aspect where you basically just have to look over at a guy and wink at him basically, and he knows exactly what he has to do on a given play. It's all about building that chemistry, and that's going to take time. But again, with somebody like Garrett Bowles, he's just his own set of issues that are mostly, for me, health related, that give me a lot more alarm for him. And same goes for Mike McGlinchey, who missed of the first part of camp, unfortunately, due to a death in the family. Mm-hmm. When he got back, he was pretty rough out there. He looked really rusty, and then he got injured. So I'm hoping that Mike McGlinchey will be able to shake off some of that rust towards the beginning of the regular season, and he's another guy that might take some time to truly get comfortable, but we paid him a lot of money, so he better step the hell up. That's all I got to say. Thank you so much, DS. Thank you for tuning in. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and dip out of here. We're just about at the 40-minute mark. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Denver Broncos Syndicate live stream. On the way out, guys, be sure to leave a like. I would really appreciate it, as well as subscribe to the channel if you have yet to do so. Those are two free and easy ways to show your support. Helps keeps the lights on here at Denver Broncos Syndicate and tells YouTube to push us out and gets us seen by more and more members of Broncos country, just like you and me. We've got our preseason matchup this Saturday against the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara. That is a road game, so I'll be streaming that game here on Denver Broncos Syndicate. We'll have game audio, play-by-play reactions, and so on. Hope you guys tune in. Those are always a lot of fun. Thank you for tuning in, Antelope. Again, it was great meeting you out at camp. Have a great day, DS, Michael Ronquillo. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. And until next time, Broncos country, I am your host, Gabe.